Salam world! I'm a shorter than average girl from down under, and today we're talking about a weird show I never expected to enjoy. Rascal does not dream of a bunny girl senpai. I think I've mentioned this before, but I don't watch animes unless someone that I really trust recommends them to me. Cause I'm not the biggest fan of the modern anime aesthetic, the exaggerated expressions, the humor, hypersexualization, and unrealistic characters. I mean, I grew up watching censored old school animes, which I kind of think were a lot more story driven and maybe a bit more serious than modern animes. So I was pretty shocked when I came back to anime in the early 2010s. But there are modern animes that do pass the litmus test, and that's because they've got really good stories or really good characters, and surprisingly, this is one of them. And that's because it tackles a huge badly handled topic, particularly when it comes to YA and adult fiction. So, as you could probably guess by that, this video isn't for kids. Kids, despite my language being as mild as I can possibly make it, will still be talking about things like puberty, desire, and the foundations for genuine connection. When children are learning how to see others, they're taught about treating others how they want to be treated, how to respect others, give turns, and share. Respect, patience, and understanding is the foundation of all relationships presented to kids, which is a really good thing. But all of a sudden, kids become of the Disney XD age, and this is where romance is introduced into the plot, where it's generally handled in two ways. Either that physical affection is some kind of reward, or there is this prolonged friendship or shared ambition, which turns into mutual admiration, and then the audience is rewarded with some kind of symbolic way to represent the relationship surpassing this friendship acquaintance status. The first is really easy to write, cheap, and quite frankly, a toxic representation of how relationships should be. The latter can be a hit or miss, depending on how the characters are written. Essentially, how they treat one another in this prolonged friendship or shared ambition before a mutual admiration is achieved between the characters. Which, although I love Avatar: The Last Airbender, Zuko and Mai and Aang and Katara weren't exactly the healthiest or well-developed relationships on the show, particularly when you've got Sokka and Suki as a comparison, which is actually one of the things that I liked about The Legend of Korra, because they didn't play off these relationships as fine or acceptable. Izumi's mother isn't Mai, and we see that Aang wasn't exactly family material. So from that standpoint, I appreciate how they didn't paddle relationships without either addressing the issues in them or indicating that they had somehow ended. But this is just one example of romance in these like older kid stories. And this gets us to YA. The major difference between relationships in YA and those of like older kid fiction is that the characters have gone through puberty and there is a level of acknowledgement of that. Although some of the characters in like kid fiction are beyond the age of puberty, explicit feelings aren't directly addressed and are either played off as something embarrassing or funny by being gross. Like a fart joke, essentially. Something that is natural, but better handled in private quarters. That is no longer the case in YA. References or descriptions of explicit acts are expressed, and the foundations for mutual respect and prolonged acquaintanceship are kinda ignored, or at least sped up due to desire or curiosity. This generally leads to complications, love triangles, or just bad examples of what relationships should be, which is why I stay away from YA and particular genres of adult fiction. To know why that is, we really need to understand what happens in puberty and why conflating it with romance leads to toxic relationships and unrealistic expectations in real life. But basically, we've got animal bodies, and they want to survive. And in these bodies, we've got this cool inbuilt feature which promotes our bodily functions, called the endocrine system. Sometimes we really do need to follow the science that it gives us for survival, but other times we don't, and so we get to use our mind and our free will to decide whether to follow it or ignore it. But this level of control requires training, and that is why babies need diapers until they are able to use a potty. Parents help kids choose their food before they understand the plate method, or why they require bed or nap times to regulate sleep, and why we comfort kids and teach them how to channel or express their emotions. As the child grows, they gain more confidence about the level of control that they have, so their sense of self also grows. But then puberty hits and messes it all up. Whether a child had prior knowledge to what's happening or not, the experience is traumatizing. Because essentially, they've just lost all control of their emotions again, and their body is changing in a way that they can't make it do what they want it to do. Plus, from media and society, they've been conditioned to think that these feelings are somewhat gross and embarrassing, which just adds another level of complexity to the unraveling self-image they're already going through. So just like a child needs help learning to manage other endocrine functions, so do teens with this new challenge. But this isn't a situation where adults are helping them by encouraging them to try new foods. It's more about being patient with their emotions, sitting down and trying to unravel the feelings that they have, and most importantly, restoring their confidence in a healthy manner. It's about building trust and emotional education. Fiction is not meant for that. They're stories reflecting different aspects of human nature and impacts of different environments, beliefs, and circumstances. It shows the good, the bad, and the morally grey, which is not great when emotional maturity hasn't been fully reached yet. So desires, which are connected to survival, hijack our ability to interpret stories, and so we may enjoy negative or unhealthy aspects that are being presented. And this isn't just about lust. This ranges from enjoying trends, mukbangs, and ASMR, and fad lifestyles, all the way to more complex things like how our befriend and defend response makes us like the "I can fix them" trope, or the fight and flight response makes us like the quest with the adequate prize trope. And I don't speak as someone who is infallible to this. I have gone down those rabbit holes too. Unfortunately, these things are made to sell, and so an impressionable audience is an easy target, where no one seems to be liable or responsible for the consequences. If we want to stay positive, though, each of these is a new learning opportunity to develop our emotional intelligence and understand why these things make us feel a certain way, whether these are feelings that we should work on to become better in control people. But the big negative, of course, is that it leads to really unrealistic fantasies and expectations of what we would like in our own futures. And one of these topics of unrealistic expectations is how the sexes view each other. Particular gender tropes are better than others in different types of fiction. So depending on the genre or medium that a person enjoys, or the target audience for this fictional experience, you're going to be exposed to a set variety of gender tropes. One must also realize that not all stories aim to focus on human interaction, yet an audience may still connect and find a character compelling. And so what the mind does is it fills the gaps and creates an illusion of positive human interaction. Each person starts projecting the way that they wish to be seen or treated on these characters that they've deeply connected to. So is it a bad thing? And is fiction destroying real-life relationships and interactions? Good questions. And they can't be answered with a mere yes and no. The answer lies in the story's author's or architect's intentions, as well as the quality of the storytelling. Some stories are made to highlight humanity's worst attributes, the difficulty in finding true balance of the most important things in life. Or there are stories that aren't focused on the individual at all, but highlight a system, a world, or a society. Or they're just leisure experiences to make us feel good. Many stories are a combination of multiple intentions, but when leisure and authentic connection connections mix, sometimes we struggle to differentiate between what is a good connection and what connections we like. Because at the end of the day, these things could be completely different. We've talked about desires and the origin of connection before, but to summarize, we crave to be seen, to be listened to, and to be wanted by others, because it affirms our own existence. And depending on how you've been seen previously, how much you've been listened to or included, how you desire a connection differs. It's unique in a way that it'll be a combination of different characteristics that you'll need to have in your life to feel fulfilled. And mind you, that this combination doesn't need to come from one person. People can have numerous individuals in their inner circle of valuable connections to satisfy their feeling for affirmation. Like, they could have a person who affirms their looks, a person who listens to their every need, a person who relies on them to survive, someone who acts on their word, someone who protects them, someone who gives them whatever they want, or someone to lead them. One person to tick all the boxes doesn't exist. However, in saying that, there is a basic level of human interaction which defines an individual as objectively good, and it is an individual who upholds the dignity of those around them. An individual of this nature can be observed displaying these across-the-board characteristics which are known as green flags. Green flags are behaviors which indicate an individual appreciates the value of each creature, without it offending their sense of self or expecting a transaction in return for their level of treatment. They are learnt traits displayed to all levels of life, from the environment to other people. Now, for me, the biggest green flag character of all time is Aragorn, son of Arathorn from Lord of the Rings. He is so humble despite his impressive resume of skills and talents. He cares and values every individual he comes across, whether it be other men, the objectively more vulnerable hobbits, women, traitors, animals, and the environment. He always gives chances, keeps his word, and only acts if there is an imminent threat. But when I mention Aragorn to other guys, they tell me that he's too unrealistic for them to be like him. So let me give you a list of men who are or become green flags. Steve Rogers, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Neville Longbottom, Peter Malak, Naruto and Minato Uzumaki, Tanjiro Kamado, Alphonse Elric, Jace Tallis, Solomon Saturday, and Sokka from Avatar. As for green flag women, they're the ones who stand up for their values, have huge empathy, and put themselves in harm's way for another without fearing losing their lives. So, you've got Ellen Ripley, Olivia Benson, Miss Honey, any Lord of the Ring or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood girls, Elena Fisher, Mrs. Weasley, Gwen Tennyson, Drew Saturday, Savika, and Suki from Avatar. Whew! So really, you don't need a romantic plot or subplot to write green flag characters. A huge testimony to this is Miyazaki. There is a consistency in the way that he crafts his characters which make them feel authentic, powerful, and generous. Kind, yet ambitious and complex. His children are always curious, impressive, and emotional. His women, strong, driven, and indignant, yet compassionate at the same time. And the men? They're humble, empathetic, and gain leadership through their morally righteous actions rather than a guarantee of status due to station. Whether you're a Miyazaki fan or not, his characters' beauty come from their personalities and their journeys. None of his characters are sexualized or feel unhuman, and their interactions, despite being limited, are built on characters trying to understand each other, sharing parts of themselves with one another, genuinely speaking their minds, and when there's romance, Miyazaki builds it through mutual understanding, shared goals, or beliefs. Characters fall for each other based on the insight, inspiration, and strength they give to one another, not physical appearance or common interests. Mirroring the model of how children relationships are written rather than the corrupted sentiments of older kid fic, YA, and adult fiction. And that's because it reflects Miyazaki's perspective on love.
Ponyo loves Sosuke! I will love you too. Ponyo loves Sosuke!
Is there really a need to say more? It's unfortunate that in this day and age, romance and lust are almost used interchangeably. That a romantic relationship must be one of physical expression. And it's really easy to understand why that is. Prior to the last century, the institute of marriage was used for security, assurance, wealth, and status. It was neither for love or lust. Sometimes marriages occurred after love or lust was initiated to save face. Sometimes love developed after marriage, and sometimes it never did at all. So both romance and lust were satisfied elsewhere. However, with human advancement, the need for security, assurance, wealth, and status no longer needed to come from marriage, as well as the fact that the risk associated with lust was significantly reduced with scientific innovations. Now, the most ironic and hypocritical thing in the history of the human race is the integration of capitalism into traditional values. The idea of sinning, or the existence of sin, comes from the very ancient and universal idea that satisfying one's desires will lead to one's ruin. Because though sleeping, eating, fighting, collecting resources, or strength, and reproducing are necessary for survival, they are also like drugs. The more you act on them, the more they consume your life by needing to be satisfied. But satisfying them always came with a risk: being unprotected, getting injured, disease, or death. Which is why self-control is a fundamental teaching in most religions that have ever existed. But come consumerism, and now there is a fundamental contradiction between church and state. Theoretically, screw practice. And so new ideas of happiness were planted into society, such as the American dream, the nuclear family, a need for a single forever lover, and so on and so forth. The institute of marriage was used to encourage these ideas for a grander socio-economic survivalist game. Religious marriage became a way to satisfy desire, with God as a third party, instead of humanity still somewhat following the religious beliefs for the purpose of finding fulfillment outside desire. And so was born the thread which intertwined romance and lust in our society. Now, that's not to say that romance can't have a level of physical intimacy which is associated with lust. It can, because depending on one's love language as well as their attachment style, that level of closeness may be necessary for an individual to consolidate connection. But I've strayed away from the topic for far too long. This was all to highlight the true definition of romance: the feeling and showing of one's deep affection, admiration, appreciation, and need for another. It doesn't specify gender or species, nothing. And that's why for some there's an element of spirituality connected to romance, while for others it's a lot more physical. As I was editing this, I realized that some sickos on the internet may come across this video and misinterpret the definition of romance. So let's quickly clarify. Romance isn't about what you want to get, that's what desires are for. Instead, romance is about what you want to give to someone of equal power to you. Now, this is spoilers for a future Arcane video analysis, but love and power go hand in hand. You can't have a healthy romantic relationship with someone of greater or less power than yourself. You can still love people of greater or less power, but in those instances, that love has a different name. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is to make sure that my words don't get misused, and also to show why we have laws that protect the less powerful from the more powerful, regardless of gender, age, occupation, and even species. But now, let's get back to the video. How does this all connect to Sakuta Azusagawa from Rascal Does Not Dream of a Bunny Girl Senpai? Well, all the green flag men that I have highlighted previously have many other aspects to their character outside these green flags. And so when one looks at them as a role model, they may miss the qualities which identifies these individuals as considerate, emotionally intelligent, and compassionate. The genres that they feature in don't highlight their green flags, but their aura. And so unfortunately, depending on your perception, these attributes may be considered unnecessary or weaknesses. And then, when it comes to characters that only offer green flags, then they're considered dumb or the derogatory gay. And then you've got the men written for women. It is genuinely difficult to find a realistically written green flagged man in a romance. Until now. The Rascal Does Not Dream series is a mystery rom-com written by Hashime Komashida. Yes, a man. And so it isn't a romance which favors the female gaze. The main character, Sakuta, a 17-year-old high schooler, is nothing short of the most basic, doesn't give a damn guy that you could ever meet. He's known for his deadpan expression, calm, nonchalant demeanor, and speaking his mind, even the lewd thoughts. The mild English word rascal to describe him actually covers the true Japanese title of teenage pig, because, like most teenagers, girls are on his mind. Just based on this information alone, you're probably thinking that this is the sickest guy alive. But his actions prove otherwise. The premise of the show revolves around this phenomenon called puberty syndrome. And before your mind takes you to unholy places trying to think about what the syndrome could be, puberty syndrome describes the manifestation of emotional trauma in a metaphysical phenomenon, explained by some physics principle. Our protagonist is first exposed to puberty syndrome after his younger sister Kaide goes through it. Due to online harassment and death threats from her classmates, Kaide started manifesting scars and bruises all over her body. The worse the bullying, the worse her injuries were, until she cut herself from the internet completely, which unfortunately, instead of healing her, led to her having dissociative amnesia. The amnesia takes a severe mental toll on Sakuta and Kaide's mother, who ends up being hospitalized after a mental breakdown. Sakuta himself gets these sudden slashes on his chest and is also hospitalized, adding to the grief and confusion of having cognitively lost both his mother and sister. Doctors believed that he had cut those slashes himself due to depression. Not finding anyone to believe him, he runs away from hospital to the nearby beach, where he meets Shoko, a mysterious girl that listens to his story and gives him a few words to live by. Live a kinder life than before, which kickstarts the current story. Due to the conditions of Sakuta's mother and Kaide, his father decides that the best thing to do was split the family. He would stay with his wife and help her heal, whilst Sakuta moves away with Kaide and looks after her. Now, Kaide is basically a new personality at this point, traumatized to even see the outside world. So during the day, he leaves Kaide in their apartment while he goes to school, and then his part-time job waiting tables at a diner, only to get home to do some homework and spending time with his little sis. Rinse and repeat. Now, Sakuta is quite the introvert, and his mysterious hospitalization sprung rumors that he had gotten into a fight, which really didn't help him win the popularity contest. But he didn't care about being a social outcast, because he's got his two besties, Yuma Kunami and Ryo Futaba, a ride-or-die childhood friend and co-worker who still cared for Sakuta despite the rumors, which got him flack from his girlfriend, and the head of the science club who didn't believe the rumors and knows about his and Kaide's condition. Each arc in the story introduces a character with puberty syndrome and how Sakuta, with the help of Futaba, try to figure out the source of the syndrome and help the person heal. The first arc focuses on Mai Sakurajima, an actress/model that attends the same high school as them. She'd been acting and modeling since the age of 6 and really enjoyed the limelight, but she quit after her momager booked her a swimwear photo shoot as a minor and forced her to do it. Unfortunately, people don't forget this stuff easily, so she just wished that people would forget that she existed and start everything off with a clean slate. Her puberty syndrome, she and everything she touches becomes invisible, and with every sleep that passes, where she's invisible to someone, the more people forget that she exists. After being one of the only people to see her, and proving that puberty syndrome was real to her, Sakuta tries to figure out how to stop Mai from disappearing for good, whilst also helping her with her daily life, given that normal interactions are becoming more impossible for her. This ranges from doing her shopping, searching for people who remember her, supporting her get back into showbiz in hopes that more people will see her, and keeping himself awake to make sure that he remembers her at least. When this obviously starts to take a toll on his life, Mai slips him some sleeping drugs while helping him study, thanking him for all his effort and care and wishing him the best. And so he does lose his memory of her. And even all his diary entries that he made prior to this to remind himself of her didn't work. It wasn't until that he was in his exam that he remembered someone helped him study. So he makes a huge nuisance of himself by professing his love to her in front of the entire school, hoping to trigger their memories of her. And it works, earning him a slap and a date. And with Mai going back to showbiz without her momager, her life goes back to normal, with the addition of a caring and super supportive boyfriend and the exhilarating comfort of the limelight under her control. Arc 2 is about Tomoe Koga, a younger classmate with a dilemma. A boy that her best friend has a crush on is constantly asking her out and not taking the hint that she's not interested. However, due to this guy's popularity, she fears that rejecting him directly will jeopardize her social life. The puberty syndrome, the day is on repeat, and the only ones conscious of this are Tomoe and Sakuta. To stop the day from repeating, Tomoe comes up with a plan. With Mai's approval, Sakuta and Tomoe are going to pretend to date until summer break, and then they'll have a planned breakup, hopefully getting this guy off her back. And it works. Sakuta defends Tomoe, and the days stop repeating until they get to the last day of the semester. Then, the last day starts repeating. Not knowing why that is, Sakuta gets some insight from Futaba, realizing that Tomoe is deliberately causing the day to repeat because she had grown feelings for him. So on the fourth rerun of the final day, Sakuta tells Tomoe that he is committed to Mai and that nothing could happen between them. But instead of abandoning her, he lets her get her emotions out, listens to her outbursts. This experience wasn't nothing. Tomoe and Sakuta stay friends and co-workers, and she quickly realizes that he is not the guy for her, because she finds his brash honesty really annoying. The third case of puberty syndrome is Futaba's. So poor Futaba went through puberty earlier than the girls around her, and consequently got objectified and isolated. This led her to be very insecure about her body, wary of the male gaze and girl gossip, as well as reducing her eating. Then, Kunimi buys her bread one day, not caring about what others said about her. This led to Futaba developing a long-lived crush on him, one that he was oblivious to and didn't reciprocate. As everyone grows up, she no longer stands out and slowly becomes invisible to boys. Part of her was okay with that because she was content with what she was doing, but there was another part that wanted attention, and given that those around her didn't seem capable of doing that, she settled for the alternative, using her God-given insecurity to exploit herself online. Futaba was disgusted with herself for how good she feels about people responding to her provocative images, but at the same time she feels that no one could give her that same care and attention that Kunimi had done the day he'd given her the bread. The clashing excitement and disgust lead to two Futabas, a disgusted one and a excited one. And neither Futabas can exist in the same place, or else they negate one another. So Sakuta looks after and helps both Futabas, keeping an eye on both, with one staying at his place with Kaide and Mai, and him staying with the other, helping her terminate her online account after she gets doxxed, stopping her from committing herself, which lands him in hospital, and involving Kunimi so that Futaba realizes that she can receive that love and care that she wants if she asks, because they were always gonna want her in their life. Futaba finally confesses her feelings to Kunimi, telling him not to respond because she already knows that nothing in their relationship will change, finally merging both Futabas together. The fourth case is Nodoka Toyohama, Mai's half-sister. Mai and Nodoka have a complicated relationship. Mai's parents split shortly after her birth, and her father marries Nodoka's mom soon after. Mai somewhat resents Nodoka because she has the family and father that she never had. On the other hand, Nodoka didn't even know about Mai until she saw her on TV. She was so happy and proud to have a sister like that and aspired to be like her. But the mothers used this for the wrong reasons. Nodoka's mom uses her daughter's newfound passion to throw her into showbiz as well. But Nodoka wasn't like her sister and didn't get the same limelight. This led to Nodoka's mother comparing her daughter constantly with Mai, turning the sweet family pride into jealousy. This escalated when Mai returned back to showbiz, which led to Nodoka's puberty syndrome, switching bodies with her sister. So now Mai and Nodoka had to live each other's life, which meant that Sakuta got to spend time with Nodoka in Mai's body, helping her succeed in Mai's roles, whilst Mai stole the limelight as Nodoka. This upset Nodoka deeply, because she felt like she wasn't able to perform her sister's gigs, and seeing Mai effortlessly outshining her and her mother's public pride in her. So she tries to end it all. After another character on the show attempts to end themselves, Sakuta breaks his promise to Mai and shows Nodoka all the letters that Mai had kept from her. Because despite all, Mai knew that Nodoka wasn't at fault for her feelings, and at the end of the day, she was her little sister. Mai and Nodoka open up to one another and reconcile, returning them back to their own bodies. Unfortunately for Nodoka, her mother isn't happy with her again. But instead of taking it, Nodoka does the brave thing and moves away from her parents and into Mai's place. And this brings us to the final and most heart-wrenching arc of season 1, the end of Kaide's puberty syndrome. Throughout the show, Kaide has been observing everything that her brother has done for her and for others, and so she wants to take some of that weight away by being proactive with her treatment and getting back to a normal life. She starts writing a set of goals that she wants to achieve, and slowly does them. However, the bruises and cuts come back, which worries Sakuta. Realizing how important these goals were for Kaide, he doesn't stop her, but supports her through every step, quite literally. But then her memories return, and the 2 years Sakuta spent with new Kaide are all gone. This breaks Sakuta. After spending 2 years looking after and developing a new relationship with his sister, she remembers nothing of it. And he has to somehow go back to his old life that he had before Kaide's puberty syndrome? For what? Kaide's sake? His scars reopen as a consequence, and the mysterious Shoko comes to help him and console him. Now, Kaide ends up reading her diary from the previous 2 years and thanks her brother for all he did for her despite not remembering it, but that's not the thing that pulls Sakuta together. It's actually everything that he's ever done to live a kinder than before life, which then comes back to be kind to him. And this is where we're going to talk about Sakuta himself. He's not a traditional hero, but a hero nonetheless, because he decides to believe others despite how ridiculous their problems may sound or irrational their feelings are. He didn't judge. He didn't pick out the logistics, because he realizes that for them, this was something. It was impactful and meaningful to their life. So, to be kinder than before, it meant listening, meant telling the truth, and being patient with the emotional and instantaneous backlash, without him taking any of it personally. It meant surveying the situation and opening up to a degree which was necessary to highlight his ability to help. It meant being accountable for his clumsiness, his intuition, and his forgetfulness, if he could see that a negative consequence could come about from it. Already, by that, you can see the green flags in his ability to communicate, be an active listener, and take responsibility for, the very least, his own actions. But the green flags continue further. We see the classical takes, like him caring for boys, girls, children, and animals alike. The humility in his demeanor, which like anime fashion is usually taken too far for humor's sake. And as well, the desire to help others without asking anything in return. Now, the show actually highlights the girls' skepticism towards Sakuta's intentions, with all of them initially refusing help with him because they didn't want their puberty syndrome to be exploited by him for some personal gain. But because he's so aware of his own sensibility, how his feelings work, and the reputation they have due to other men who don't understand how they work and have actually hurt or creeped out women, Sakuta understands their hesitations and places boundaries, as well as revealing some personal vulnerability to make them feel safer when they're around him. And when he helps them, he makes a point not to get anything in return, and continues to be in their life to support them. Now, this next bit may sound condescending, but Sakuta uses his blunt and lewd commentary for creating a safe place as well. It warns girls of his emotional state, or is a strategy to stop relationships developing further when he doesn't want them to. Although every comment he makes annoys the girls, they recognize the lack of malicious intent because of his tone, eye contact, and body language. None of them find him threatening. Essentially, he's using these comments as a shield against him by warning the girls or create the lines for their platonic relationships. Anyone in a fight and flight response is hypervigilant to a person's tone, movement, and eye contact intensity, so they can calculate their next move. And this most certainly activates when someone imposes on your personal space, either physically, verbally, or paralinguistically. So, making those comments helps the girls activate this response as he deems it safer for them to do so when he's thinking like a guy. But physically and paralinguistically, he's completely disarmed. So they realize that he's not going to act on anything. Then, when it comes to his relationship with Mai, not only does he not make any moves on her till she feels comfortable, with every case of puberty syndrome that he's solving, he keeps her up to date and in the loop so that she continues to trust him, and so that in a way, he could possibly reduce any jealousy which could be formed. But yeah, basically, he does everything in his power to stay within Mai's lines for cheating. And when Mai perceives something as possible cheating, like Shoko's letter to him, or the classic anime slip and fall, he doesn't make excuses as to why to him this wasn't cheating, because he understands that perspective matters. Instead, he makes it up to her, apologizes, and only explains himself if she wants to hear it. At the end, it's Sakuta's willingness to treat each person according to their perspective, opening up their views by showing them the other side rather than telling them, and being a safe place for his friends and his family, which ultimately lead them to feel concern, sympathy, and the desire to help him when he is hurt, which I think is a really beautiful way of showing how relationships can develop and blossom. At the end of the day, this anime is far from being perfect in my eyes, because I personally don't enjoy the dramatized female proportions and the suggestive shots, which, in all honesty, most of them weren't necessary for storytelling in this instance, but in terms of a realistic teenager who is raised right with the true appreciation for all life and not putting down anyone's honor and dignity, Sakuta and Kunimi are really decent men. And because we also see Sakuta's internal thoughts and how he swallows them, I really like the way that he's written. A realistic, heroic gentleman without the code of chivalry or the high risk, high reward male mentality that can be found all over the internet nowadays. Neither is he the totally romantic or I can fix him kind of man from every woman's dream. Just solid, independent, emotionally available, but loyal men with generous hearts. This may feel out of place on my channel, but this topic has been on my mind a lot. I've really struggled to find safe people to be around, so I wasn't feeling the need to be kind. So for some of my regular watchers on this channel, maybe you've noticed that I've stopped saying my outro. How can I say something that I'm not practicing? But then I watched this and I realized that kindness is bravery. Kindness threatens our ego. It threatens our wants and makes us vulnerable. But through kindness, we uphold each individual's dignity. It restores and it heals, making the world a little happier. So be brave, be happy, and be kind, and I'll catch you all next time.